So this is a review for the Islabike Beinn 20 large. Here he is. Nice, Owen.
Can I try the Seaway?
Sure.
Should I go the Seaway?
Yeah, go the Seaway. Hi, this is John Cornelius. I'm doing a review of the Islabike Beinn 20 large. Just so you know, I'm doing this review not because I got a discount on the bike or I got it for free or anything like that. I was actually looking for a bike for my 6-year-old, and we do some pretty serious mountain biking, and I wished that I had this review to look at. So I'm making the review I wish I had. I'm very, very happy with this bike purchase, and so I wanted to just let everybody know about it. So this bike is for a 6-year-old. He's about 47 inches tall, and he weighs about 50 pounds. We previously actually have another mountain bike that's 20-inch mountain bike that we got a few years ago for my other son, which on one hand worked very well, but had some problems. And this bike, after a lot of searching, really solved every single one of those problems and made mountain biking for a 6-year-old so much more enjoyable that I wanted to let everybody know about it. So the problem with the other bike, the number one problem with bikes for 6-year-olds appears to be that the bikes are too heavy. The other bike, even though it was with a lot of name brand components, it was a really nice bike, it had a shock on it, but when you weighed it, it was 29 pounds. And when you have a kid who is 50 pounds, a 29-pound bike is incredibly heavy. You know, the equivalent would be, I'm a 200-pound guy, and that'd be me riding a bike that weighs 100 pounds. And you can imagine riding a 100-pound bike up and over hills and doing some serious mountain biking, that would be just ridiculous. So this bike weighs an amazing 17.3 pounds. So it's shaved 12 pounds at least off of the weight of the bike, which is amazing. You lift it and it's miraculously light compared to any of the other bikes I've had and looked at, except for maybe the Woom Supra 4, which is probably the equivalent bike by another company, and we'll go over some of the differences there. However, this bike is super light, and for kids that are this small, the weight of the bike is just really, really important. I'll just go over some of the other features, but the weight is absolutely key, and they did everything you could think of to make the weight lighter. For example, they have less spokes. The spokes make the wheel plenty strong, but you simply don't need as many spokes when you're talking about a kid's bike. And so they put less spokes. They don't have a front fork, which using the other bike we had, which did have a front fork, a shock on it, the shock never activated. And really, unless you're going to spend $400 for the shock alone, you're not going to get a shock that actually works for kids. And so I'd watch him go down hills, and the entire way down, the shock never engaged. So this is just a way of saving a lot of weight without really any penalty. So I'm going to just go through some of the different things. I will compare it briefly with the Woom Supra 4 because I did spend a lot of time looking at that bike, and I'm really happy with the Islabike Beinn 20 large, so I want to talk about the differences there. So the first one is the grip shift. If you look at the grip shift here, the Supra 4 has a thumb shifter, while the Islabike Beinn 20 large has grip shift. The other bike I had before for my son did have a thumb shifter. And I know there's some debate about this, but in my experience, thumb shifters for really little kids, it just didn't work. His thumb would get tired, he'd complain about it. It just wasn't strong enough. His thumb wasn't strong enough to do that consistently, and halfway through a ride, he'd be talking about not wanting to shift anymore just because he was tired. This new grip shift system works great. It's very smooth. You can use the entire muscles of your wrist to shift, and I notice he's shifting a lot more now. And it's just really easy for him to do. The other thing that's going on here is if you look at the brakes, I mean, they look pretty standard, but the thing that's going on here is they actually have a very, very short reach, And so his little hands can get around them really, really easily, which is really nice. So stopping really isn't a problem on this bike at all. Every bike comes with a bell, which they like. The other big difference here, I don't know if you can see it, I'll describe it. But if you look at the two pedals here, I wish I had the other bike here, but I don't. You'll see that the two pedals are actually closer together than on a standard mountain bike, and even compared to others' kids' bikes. And that's called the Q factor, I think. And what that means is the pedals on this bike are closer together. So they're closer together this way. And what that does is it basically makes it so the kid sits on the bike proportionally the same as if an adult was sitting on an adult bike. And so the kid's legs aren't splayed out when he's pedaling. And having your legs splayed out when you're pedaling is actually pretty uncomfortable. And my son would constantly talk about being uncomfortable pedaling. And that seems to take care of it a lot. The other issue is that this bike has proportionally sized cranks. That they're shorter than your standard crank, but they're actually proportional for a kid's size, and that actually works really, really well. Let's see here. Another thing that my son really likes is the seat. Islabike's made a special seat that is actually kid-sized. If you look at it, it's actually narrower than a normal saddle that actually fits kids' hips, obviously, and it makes it so the ride is much more comfortable. Again, no front shock, but there is a fork. Again, we didn't notice any difference on any of the rides. He complained just as much about bumpiness, actually more with the bike with the shock. On this bike, you do feel the bumps. We took some air out of the front tire. It works fine. Obviously, he's not doing any, 5-foot drop-offs or anything like that, but we do a lot of single track and with rocks and boulders, and he's riding up and over those, and it works just fine. The other thing is the gearing. Let me see if I can turn this bike around here. And if you look at the gearing on this bike, first of all, it's a 1x7, and the Supra 4, the Woom Supra 4, is a 1x8. But if you look at the spread of the gears, the small chainring in the back and the big chainring in the back is the same in the cassette. So you're not really losing anything that way. And the Supra 4 was, I think, $130 or $140 more for that feature. And also, this bike was actually lighter than the Supra 4. So I went with it. My son doesn't notice the loss of one cog on the back. He doesn't even know. He doesn't even notice. It doesn't matter. The shifting is really good. However, one thing that I noticed that I like about the Islabike's Beinn 20 is the way they set up the gear ratios. So the one difference between the Islabike and the Woom is that this bike has a smaller cog in front on the front chainring. It has a 34, while it has basically the same width cassette in the back. So what that does effectively is it makes it so it's easier to pedal uphill. In your easiest gear in the back and the set cog in the front, the bike is actually easier to pedal uphill than the Woom Supra 4. Now, the reason I prefer that is that I don't think kids, when you're mountain biking, it actually matters, that your top speed is so much faster. I don't really care about that. And my son, likes going fast downhill, but he's not racing anyone professionally or anything like that. So he doesn't even notice on the downhills. It's really about control and finesse, and he's going faster than he's going as fast as he needs to downhill. The problem has always been uphill, where if you don't have a good enough ratio, it's too hard to turn the pedals around, and it basically makes it hard to climb steep hills. And since we do live in California in the foothills, there are steep climbs that you need to go up. And basically what Islabike did is they chose to go for a little bit easier gear ratio so you can climb uphill better, which is exactly what we wanted, and it's turned out great. My son rides so much better on this bike than he did on the other one. He has plenty of enough gears to be able to go up really steep hills. He loves it. He has plenty of, he can go really fast on the downhills still, but it really has worked out well for him. So I think that's it. You can get your name on the bike, which is cute. I really like the color. He's really, really enjoyed it. He was a really good mountain biker before, but he is doing great, and he's done a number of rides where he is already riding way better. He just got on this bike, and he climbs better, he climbs faster, he's more confident. The other thing is this bike is lower to the ground. The bottom bracket's lower to the ground as well. So kids have better control when they're riding. So fantastic bike, great purchase. I think it was like $470 too, which makes it, it's an expensive bike, but you really, really get a fantastic bike. And $470 for a bike is really not that much these days. So, and it's again significantly less than the Wum Supra 4, and it's lighter, and it does everything that we need it to do. And so we've been really happy with its purchase. So that's it. The Islabike Beinn 20 Large. Here you can see how his pedal strokes with the narrow Q factor totally fits his body here. The 17.3 pound, super, super lightweight. Makes it super easy on climbs, or at least as easy as things get. Oh. And he's doing a great job. Loves it. It's easy shifting. Nice, Owen. Good shift.